All right. Good morning, everyone. Gonna get started. Hope everyone got some coffee and some breakfast. Got it? Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. This is our 6th annual KAZOOcon. We are very, very excited. Quick question.
And we want to make sure that you guys have the tools in your tool belt to, compete in this evolving market and stuff. So one of the reasons the market is evolving is that the traditional office is no longer. It's no longer, hey, everybody has to come into your office at 8 o'clock and stay there till 5 o'clock and sit at your desk and make sure you take your 1 hour lunch. No, it's more of, hey, I am a millennial. I am not. But if I was, I want to work on the beach. I want to be, promoted quickly. And for all the millennials out here, I'm very proud of you guys because you're doing a great job. But at the end of the day, people are looking for a balance in life. They're willing to put the long hours in, but they want to do it on their own terms. And so we have found some really interesting stats, and some of these stats are telecommunication or telecommuting is increasing year over year. Companies are becoming more positive around remote workers. They're starting to realize that they can hire better people or better for their particular jobs that they're looking for if they expand their talent pool worldwide versus just people, in their neighborhood. And finally, a lot of people are really expecting to work from home once in a while. They want to spend time with their kids. They want to spend time with their families. They want to be able to have some type of work-life balance. They don't mind putting the long hours if they can have that. So again, the source I got this was all from the internet, so it must be true. But, hopefully you guys are, aware of this, or you might even be doing the same. I was talking to my buddy Rick over there, and he tells me, he's planning to move to Florida for the summer, and I'm like, what about work? He's like, I never go to the office anymore. Why would I? So, it's not just the millennials, it's us older generation too. No offense, Rick. So, what are we doing about this trend? You will lose if you go into a customer and just say, hey, I have a phone. You might still find a couple of customers here and there, but people are looking for much more than just a phone. The trend is going to more of a distributed workplace, like we were talking about, and people are really starting to expect, full remote workers that are able to not just communicate via voice, but they can communicate via video and chat. And so these are the things that we are really going to be focused on in the next few days of how we are going to enable you guys to compete in this growing economy. So before we do that, let's talk a little bit about 2600 Hertz and what we've been working on, and maybe just some stats about our company, because I think it's always good to know that if you're partnering with someone, you want to make sure that they're stable here and they're going to be around for a long, long time. So since we all love stats, let's go over some. Year-over-year growth for last year, we were 80% year-over-year growth. That's pretty good in telecommunications, and we're pretty proud of that fact. What we did with all that money, instead of just giving us gold-plated Porsches and driving around and living the high life, we actually reinvested it all back into the company. So what does that mean? We started to hire people like crazy, and we are hiring more experienced engineers and more experienced management and more experienced marketing people. And the reason we're doing all this is because we really want to make sure that it's not just building a strong, amazing product, but we want to make sure that we help you guys market it to your customers so you guys can grow your businesses. And some of the key hires of recently, we hired a new head of QA. We've always had a QA, but we've never really had a strong head of QA. Our new head of QA has 15 years of telecommunication experience, and he cannot wait to start finding all those little bugs that people have expressed. I mean, I've never heard of any bugs on our platform, but whenever you do a new release, that's because we always want to have QA to make sure that there is no bugs in the future. We also hired a very experienced community manager. She helped Sun grow their community exponentially in a very short amount of time. We're bringing her in because she has the experience. She knows how to bring everybody together and work together as a whole. So we're super excited about that. We've also been doing a big company reorg. And part of this is to we need to be faster. We know that you guys are asking for more features and functionality. We know that you guys need the information quickly. So we have been working really hard to get our ducks in a row so we can be more useful for you guys. We've also been really focusing on support. We've rolling out a new support tool we'll talk about in the next 2 days that's going to enable you guys to get faster response times. One of the things is if your customer is asking you a question and you don't know the answer, you need to get that answer quickly. So we are trying to give you everything you guys can to get that answer to your customer as soon as possible. Or even better, we just try to be more proactive so you guys have the answers before your customer even asks. We also are introducing a professional services team. Traditionally, companies have come to us saying, hey, I need this one particular application. And if it wasn't on our overall roadmap, we'd try to push them away. We'd say, hey, go check out the community, go check out third-party developers, bring out your own developers in. It just wasn't feasible for what they're trying to do. So we now have a true professional services community or services team headed up by Kristen Muramoto, if she's here. Please raise your hand. I did not see Kristen, but I see her brother Eric. So Eric, why don't you raise your hand in Kristen's honor? So talk to Eric. Oh, Kristen, hey, there's Kristen. So if you guys need any projects, even any small customization for your business processes, or if your customer says, hey, I need this one thing for me to move forward with you guys, talk to Kristen. We're trying to be very aggressive at getting you guys all the applications that you need to be successful. And some of these one-offs, in the past we try to pass it to other people, but now we're trying to make sure that whatever you guys need, we'll get it for you. Finally, we're talking about expansion. So in the next few days, you'll be hearing all sorts of crazy stories about where we're expanding to. You'll learn all about GDPR if you haven't heard already. And what we're starting to notice is that in this area, customers don't just have an office in the United States anymore. They're expanding quickly, and they want to make sure their communication system is expanding with them. So we want to make sure that we're there for you so you can be there for your customers. Finally, with partnerships, we've been doing a lot of close-tied partnerships with all the components in our stack. And what does that mean is that, from our databases to everything, we have gone with the experts in these areas to make sure that we are not just contributing code back to them, but we are best friends with them. So if there's ever a question or if there's a new technology that's coming out, we are the first ones to know. And they're very excited for us to support them more. So we're almost done, and I know we have a lot to cover in the next 2 days. So I just want to go over some of the 4 main focuses, just kind of refresh everybody of what we've been really focused on in the last 6 months. Everything we do is around 4 ideas, which is, hey, you have your partner-facing technologies, your end-user technologies, your behind-the-scenes, and your business support. And so around those concepts, you'll be hearing about what we're doing with the partner-facing technologies. You'll hear more about the App Exchange. I know we've been talking about this for years, but this is truly at a point where you can now start, deploying your own apps, and in exchange that other people can start buying your apps for you or from you. And this is going to be 2 things that's going to be great about this is that it's going to allow developers to start selling their apps and making money on the App Exchange, but it also allows you to get more features and functionality that if it was just one company building these, you probably wouldn't have all these features and functionality. As you know from Apple and Google, it's really great when you have a giant community of app developers, and so you can compete in pretty much any parts of the market. So you'll learn more about that. There's also the end-user technologies. This is a big one. A lot of customers have been asking us, hey, their customers really want to see the fancy, shiny XYZ. So we'll be talking about this. And we've been listening to you guys ask for all these features. So I'm about to give you guys a list of features. So introducing nothing, because Carl is actually going to give that entire list of features at the next talk at 9:30. So I'm just trying to tease you guys up. So hopefully you guys are getting excited about Carl's talk, because he's crazy Carl, and he'll tell you all about the cool applications that are coming out that we're launching these next 2 days. And just a reminder for all you salespeople out there, we are trying to give you all the features out there, but just remember, it's not about just showing, it's about, selling. And when you sell, don't just sell on, hey, here's all these cool new features, but give them a reason why they should be buying them. Make sure you're listening to what the customers are saying. So Now, we'll also go behind the scenes and say, hey, you can't be a telco without, or you can't be a telco in a box without billing options. So we're going to give you more billing options than you've ever had before. We also have a bunch of amazing partners here that give you even additional billing options. So you have lots of options around billing. We're going to give you ways to do invoicing to your customers, new service plans so you can set up specific orders for your customers, and you can set up particular service plans for your customers, so you don't just have to sell per device or per user or per minute. You can have all sorts of different combinations. We're going to go over internationalization. No longer do you need to be just selling in the United States. If you're selling in Germany, if you're selling in Spain, if you're selling in Australia, we have a ton of experience because we have customers all over the world, and we will work with you guys to make sure that you guys know exactly what you're doing before you go there. And also, we will be going over the next 2 days about GDPR compliance and what you should be aware of. And, we don't usually talk about this, but we accidentally had a couple features that we were about to build that would have made us not GDPR compliant. And so now we're just not going to build them. So great job, GDPR. So they made our lives easier. And finally, we'll talk about taxes, what you guys should know about taxes, and how we're going to automate this for you, because no one likes to deal with taxes, but the government loves to have them. So we got to focus on that. And later on this week, we're also going to be going over again hosted, private, global, and new features and functionality to make your lives easier with hosted, private, and global. And if you're brand new and you're not sure, hosted is, hey, our hosted environment in our data centers, you're sharing resources with everybody else. Private cloud is our data centers, but you have your own dedicated instance, so you're not sharing resources. And then global is, hey, you have your own data center, your own servers, and we install the software and help you guys manage it. So we will go deep into that later on in this conference. We'll talk about what we're doing with Cluster Manager to make sure that you guys understand all the new automations that are coming out with it. And finally, we could not do KAZOOcon without these sponsors. So if you meet any of the sponsors, do me a favor, buy them a beer, or give them a handshake, or a high five, or just say thank you, or listen to what they're saying. We have some amazing sponsors, and they're doing some amazing things. So when you talk to them, tell them I sent you over, and tell them please come back next year, because we, again, could not do this without them. So big shout for the sponsors, and quick clap for the sponsors. What I should have done was actually videotape that and pretend like that was my speech, that you guys were clapping for me. My girlfriend would have been very proud, and so would my mom. So I might actually have you guys do that one more time a little bit later. So finally, as a bonus for all you KAZOOcon attendees, all the new apps that are coming out, we are going to give you guys a quick insight into them. So if you're on our hosted system, we're going to allow you guys to actually, we will turn them on for you on your own hosted environment. If you're in private cloud or global, we are going to give you guys access via the sandbox so you guys can kick the tires around. And at some point, we will eventually turn these off, but we're going to go over pricing and everything with you guys. And if you see Eric or Ed, Ed and Eric, Ed's over there, please raise your hand. And Eric is over there, please raise your hand. Please feel free to contact them in the next 2 days and talk to them about the different apps and what you guys are looking for, and they can get your information, and we'll turn everything on for you guys and get you guys accounts, because we want you guys to be the first ones in the world to see everything we've been working on as a thank you for coming out here. So finally, my generic slide of thank you. Feel free to contact me at contact@2600Hz. Just kidding, mine actually, it's Patrick at 2600Hz.com. Any questions so far? Excellent. You guys, I really appreciate it. And next, I believe we have Crazy Carl and his talks about the applications.
is the one you probably saw a lot of emails from her, got a lot of announcements, communications. She is a big part of making this venue possible. In addition, we also have Elisa and Jay. All of the design that you see here, the programs, the different communications with our partners, with our analysts, they really put a lot of hours in to make this happen. So if you see them around, as well as our staff, they're wearing some navy blue shirts, which don't differ too much from the black shirts that you guys are wearing. But definitely say hi to the team and introduce yourselves. I know they're really excited to meet everybody. So let's get you guys awesome. Are you in the room? Perfect. Cool. Give us 1 second. Gonna do one technical thing. Hold on 1 sec. Perfect. So I'd like to formally introduce, we have our CEO and co-founder, Darren Schreiber, 2600 Hertz. And we also have, you got it?
Yeah, figured out.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Morning.
Oh, we also have Asim Vigani and from T-Mobile, and these two are going to tell you some really exciting things that we're working on right now. So take it away, gentlemen.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely excited to be here. All right, let me get this in pre-zo mode.
Oops.
So as most of you guys know, we've announced a partnership with you guys here at 2600. Really excited to talk about T-Mobile and everything we're bringing to the table for you guys. As you guys know, over the last few years, T-Mobile has been going through a lot of changes, and we've been focusing on the business market. So we'd like to talk through a little bit of that. So you guys know, T-Mobile, we're currently the third largest carrier in the nation, currently the fastest growing. We are the Un-carrier. As you guys know, we have a focus on customers, simplicity, value, and more freedom. We want to alleviate some of the issues that you guys currently have with your current wireless offerings and make things a little bit easier, make your device certification a little bit easier. I know you guys currently have issues with that. In addition, like I said, we're America's fastest growing wireless company, 81 million customers, 56% business growth since 2017, and $43 billion in revenues in 2018. I think the key factor on this slide here is that 56% business growth. I hope you guys see out in the field, there's a demand for our offerings for both voice and MI, mobile internet data, from your customers. We currently have 33 million from 2012 to 2018, we went from 33 million customers to 81.3. Again, Q1 2019, another great win, 24 quarters in a row of adding 1 million new lines. That's 1.7 million net adds in Q1 2019. That's 6% of our revenue. And the churn is at 0.88, lowest in the industry. So if you guys add this to your packets and add this as part of your portfolio, you're looking at something that's not going to churn a whole lot. Customers are extremely happy with us, and our service just continues to grow and get better. And what everyone wants to ask about, how is the network growing? What's going on in the future? Our coverage footprint has grown nearly 3 times since 2018. We now cover, I believe it's 98% or 99% of all of the US population, 326 million. Our record, it's a record growing, record breaking as far as our growth goes. We quadrupled the LTE coverage and are only looking to get bigger and bigger. I know most of you guys are interested in the technical aspects too. We were a big winner in the spectrum auctions recently for 600 megahertz. That's the low band spectrum that's going to really help propagate across long areas and long distances and cover the vast majority of the US population. Anything there? Oh, okay. The network difference, what makes our network better than the rest? It's a combination of low and mid-band frequency, right? We look right now and you see a whole lot of people talking about millimeter wave, which is high band frequency. Yes, it's great for 5G, but it doesn't propagate well over a long distance and it doesn't penetrate. We have, combined with our potential acquisition of Sprint, the biggest vast majority of mid and low band frequency. It's gonna help us go twice as far and 4 times better into buildings than the competitors. 5G, what everyone's asking about. What is 5G? I'll be honest with you right now, as we know, it's just a whole lot of talk, right? People have millimeter wave, but something as simple as my hand or a piece of paper can block the signal. This is why we talk about that mid and low band. That's gonna help propagate that, and it's gonna make the 4G LTE experience that much better also. This is kind of the guidelines, kind of the overall view of 5G. We're going to be looking at fixed 5G, which is going to be the fixed broadband and routers, which I think is going to interest most of you guys with wireless failover and SD-WAN solutions. That's going to be the fixed. The mobile is, as we know, the standard stuff. The virtual reality, which is big now, the drones, tablets, smartphones, wearables, laptops, and then the IoT, which we will also be getting into, which some of you guys may be playing in that field right now with sensors and maybe some smart city stuff. That's going to be the standard IoTs, low throughput and low consumption of data. 5G summary. 5G supports a broad and diverse set of use cases. It's not just about speed, it's about coverage and low latency. There's a lot of issues where you're not gonna need the speed, you're gonna need that fast ping, and that's what's gonna get you your customers the experience that they're looking for. Our multi-band approach is really, really unique. If you look at it right now, like I said, most people are focusing on millimeter wave when that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on all the different aspects here. And we have, with our potential acquisition, a lot of open system architecture options coming up. Now on to the fun stuff, which we won't get into too much of details here. It's a very simple proposition for your customers. We're looking at T-Mobile One for voice and data for smartphones and tablets for your customers. Very simple, unlimited talk, text, and data. Unlimited entertainment, so they can stream unlimited on there. Texting and data abroad. We're also putting in-flight texting and 1 hour of data when you fly on a airplane that's GoGo enabled. Unlimited in Mexico and Canada with 5 gigs of LTE, and you get mobile hotspot included in there. We're also offering One Plus, which is the same offering as T-Mobile, but a little bit, some added features, including LTE hotspot, unlimited HD streaming, unlimited GoGo in-flight, and unlimited stateside texting, mobile without borders. More of these details we can get into the nitty-gritty of as the conference goes on. This is more of the key pitch that's going to go with your customers, is going to be the Simple Choice MI. These are pooling data plans that most of our customers in the channel space are utilizing for LTE failover and SD-WAN. I think this is going to be the big play. We do have some custom pricing for you guys that we can discuss after the conference when you want to position this to your customers. We also have a small 2 gig voice and data option also. All right, so we will be outside in the hallway talking if you guys will have any questions about the offering. In addition, I hope you guys check out our truck outside. We have the T-Mobile Experience truck. We have some goodies and giveaways there, some nice swag. So check it out. We got some games. If any of you guys need to do any upgrades, add-ons, or want to talk anymore, please feel free to talk to us. I know that we'll be covering T-Mobile a little bit more on one of the partner podcasts or calls that are coming up and going through the offering. I can't wait to partner with you guys and see where this can go. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it off to Darren now.
All right. Oop, I'm going to grab this. Okay, thanks. I am super excited about this in particular. And let's see if I can figure out how to use a dongle on this laptop. Other side, somebody whispered. Thanks. And I need your code. Very secure here at 2600 hertz. Need a password. All right, so just quick intro because Mike, it's not till tomorrow. So my name's Darren. I'm the CEO here and one of the co-founders of 2600 hertz, along with Patrick Sullivan, who's somewhere in the back who you heard from this morning. Want to make sure everyone's a little awake here. There was a heavy tech dive this morning and features. There's all sorts of stuff going on. But I know a lot of you guys, I actually didn't see by a show of hands, so I'm going to ask you a second time. How many of you guys are current customers who have tried using the Sprint integration that we had in the past? Okay, so good, a bunch of you guys. How many of you guys had some struggles with those integrations? All right, same crowd basically. So we're not surprised on that. We're aware of that. We've actually done a lot of work to finesse the Sprint partnership we have, and we still very much actually like it. So we are not here to badmouth the Sprint integration. I think it's actually still pretty darn cool. But it became pretty obvious that we also needed another solution. And actually, where's Max? Max over there, who's raising his hand, is actually one of the key architects and designers of the mobile applications we have today. And he spent a lot of time on the Sprint integration. And it does a lot of cool stuff, but it also has some restrictions. It has some restrictions on the devices you can use, and it also has some restrictions on the pricing and the coverage options that are available. And so we sort of heard from people that there were some limitations there, but we also kind of knew that was coming. When Max actually first designed the system with me and we sat and whiteboarded it out, we actually designed the system to support every carrier, hopefully. So our vision was that you actually could come in and select which carrier you preferred based on whatever the dynamics are, and then you could keep them all in a portfolio that you resell to your customers. It also solves the problem if a customer says they have a preference. One of the things that Patrick and I have always joked about since day one of running this company is rather than get into an argument with a customer, is cloud better, is premise better, is T-Mobile better, is Verizon better, whatever, we'd rather just be able to say yes, yes, we can do that for you. And so the goal is really that whatever the customer wanted, we could basically help you guys provide that to them. So this is kind of a feather in the cap, so to speak, that we finally got a second carrier because it's taken a lot longer than we hoped. But we're really excited to actually offer both. So one of the first questions that we received when we announced this is, are you abandoning Sprint, especially knowing that the merger is possibly coming? And the answer is no. We are going to continue to offer both services. We'll talk a little bit more about the merger later on, but we expect to continue to provide both these services for the foreseeable future. So what are we specifically going to be providing based on this in terms of 2600 hertz? Well, the first thing is you have to have some background on the differences between these providers. And one of the absolute key ones, how many people here are familiar with the concepts behind CDMA and GSM? Good, most of you, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on this. I'm going to make this short and sweet on this one. We have had sort of an evolution of different technologies that have, for marketing purposes, been called first generation, second generation, third generation, so on. CDMA and GSM are basically the fact that we have large corporations who could not agree on a standard and picked two different standards. It turns out that those gambles get made well before you hear about them, and Verizon and Sprint gambled on CDMA, and most of the rest of the world gambled on GSM. So some people would argue that GSM is kind of the winner, but really what this resulted in is handsets that have little radios in them. Believe it or not, those of you who are around when you might have had a 14.4 modem in your house or a 9600 baud modem, well, those are just in your cell phone now, right? Those haven't actually really gone away. And there's basically a concept of a modem that's in your cell phone and a radio transmitter and receiver, and there's different technologies that power that. And CDMA and GSM were basically the primary ones that we worked with before. And one of the things we were tied to when we chose Sprint is we were tied to CDMA, because Sprint uses CDMA. And that meant we were tied to handsets that have CDMA in them, right? So that immediately excluded a lot of devices. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But the T-Mobile partnership we have now introduces the idea that you would also be able to access GSM networks. So a little bit more detail on the differences between these two networks. The main ones I'm going to point out, you can hopefully read the screen from back there, but the main ones I'm going to point out are the SIM cards and the carrier whitelist. Right? On CDMA, it's up to the carrier to basically keep a database, or at least that's how most of them implemented this, that when your phone goes to check in and try to join the CDMA network, it has to be authorized, which gave the carriers the capability to exclude or include device types. Right? So then you were actually able to say, okay, my phone is CDMA, but my carrier has to approve that device. And if you guys were here from the beginning with our Sprint integration, you were actually here when even the carriers were not used to unlocked phones. They did not like this idea. You can actually thank Google for pushing that through, because there was a lot of lobbying to get rid of that. But initially, it was a marketing scheme. In fact, Sprint actually had restrictions on us that we could not sell, and you guys could not sell devices that were more than a year or newer, right? So the new iPhone, you couldn't sell that. The new Android, you couldn't sell that. And so right off the bat, we were a little bit crippled with our ability to entice customers to utilize this service. So that is one of the big differences with GSM. GSM, effectively, the customer information is on your SIM card. Right, so if you can put the SIM card into the phone has the correct bands, which is the radios inside the phone, to use T-Mobile's spectrum, and that customer information is on there, it generally will work. Right? It removes that whole need to figure out what kind of devices is this in. You basically just put the SIM card in, and if it connect to the radio networks, then it's happy. So that's a big, big difference. But the other thing that's also happening is 4G LTE. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just going to tell you that, boy, we have a cutthroat industry in mobile, and so anything that they can say that makes a consumer buy a phone, they'll say. 4G and LTE were very specific standards. In fact, they were specific standards in some cases about the amount of capacity that you would receive as a user on the network, as well as the tower. Things were pitched like 1 gig to the handset in bandwidth would be considered LTE. Right? A lot of the carriers started putting this on all the phones before they had actually reached the ability to provide the service at the level that the standard described, which has led to all sorts of other interesting, cute things like LTE-A, and I don't remember how Sprint's pitching the newest LTE, enhanced LTE, and there's all sorts of other variations, which frankly in some cases are cool new technologies, in other cases are an admission sort of through marketing that's like, oh yeah, we finally have the thing we said we had last year, right? So some of that's been a catch-up game to get marketing out, and we're now seeing the same thing go on with 5G, and there are some significant differences in 5G. But more importantly, something that has not changed is spectrum. And as these two carriers duke it out with Verizon and AT&T, and possibly someday we'll have partnerships with those guys too, a very important thing is emerging, which is that the towers themselves are becoming less important, and the spectrum that you have licensed to use is becoming more important. General rule of thumb, the lower the spectrum, the more likely it's going to penetrate objects. Right? So when you hear people talking about 600 megahertz, like T-Mobile's talking about, it means that's probably going to work much better indoors, right? Or through a window or a wall. When you hear Sprint talking about how they have all this capacity in the millimeter wave or high band spectrum, that it means their equipment is going to be much faster, but as soon as there's an obstruction between the device and the wireless tower, that signal is going to cut out. All right, so the war right now is less about where are your towers and much more about can I get direct access between the tower and the user who's using it, and what's going to happen if there's some sort of interference there, and can we use multiple frequencies to try and work around that so that when conditions are good, your signal's fast, but when conditions are poor, your signal's still tolerable, right? So that's where the 5G kind of world is revolving around. And of course we have really crafty marketing departments who are going and making all sorts of more interesting, confusing statements like 5G evolution, which I honestly don't know how that got approved and put out. I don't know if you guys watched the news on this, but Sprint, I believe, is actually suing AT&T for confusing the customer on this, or is at least lobbying to have the FCC, or not the FCC, but the Federal Trade Commission, because this is really kind of false advertising. But the idea was supposed to be that AT&T was saying, look, we have a roadmap to get there and evolve into 5G, so we're just going to go ahead and call this 5G E standing for evolution, because we kind of have it sort of, not really. So the consumers are already like, I don't know what the hell's going on, and that's probably going to continue. So hopefully you guys, since you have relationships with a lot of these consumers, can actually sell them on this stuff and actually teach them a little bit, as long as you understand it more. And one of the funny things that I think is a little bit lesser known, I don't know if I have it on the previous slide, but oh, I do. 4G actually is probably going to be around for a while, and frankly, it's probably good enough for the next couple years. You may get slow service on your phone when you're near a particular tower because the tower's overloaded collectively with all the users around it, but the actual underlying technology should support 100 megs when it's properly deployed, up to a gig in some cases to each individual user. So if the carriers continue to enhance their capacities at the towers, and in addition the handsets and the towers get better at the old LTE stuff, even when you're out of 5G range, or there is no 5G service, you may still get basically broadband kind of quality to your cell phone. So what you guys hear and what you guys experience are actually going to be two very different things over the next few years. And one of our goals at 2600 Hertz is we're not really sure who's going to win. So we're going to have multiple horses in the race here. That's kind of our philosophy is if we can make sure that we empower you guys to pick, then you guys can pick. And we'll figure out who the winner is from that. Except these guys, but anyway. Okay, so let's go into some sort of logistics, tactical things. First thing you're probably going to experience, or well, let's ask another question, but I'm sure it's going to be the same answer. How many people who played with the Sprint integration prior had to navigate device procurement and SIM cards, getting SIM cards? All right, a whole bunch of hands. How many people thought that was a fun experience? No, one person. Okay, so I don't believe you, but we'll talk later. I'd really love to know how that's possible. It turns out that, and I'm teasing, it turns out that Sprint has a lot of different types of SIM cards, and the reason is that they actually put different information on the SIM cards to tell the phone how to use the network based on the type of phone it is and the radios in the phone. But that means that you have to get the right SIM card and know which SIM card works with which phone. And because these SIM cards, can anyone tell the difference between these SIM cards? No, of course you can't, because the tail is in the tiny little product SKU at the bottom. And you're supposed to, I don't know, tattoo this on your arm so when you're talking to a client, you know which one you're supposed to give them. I have no idea how that was really supposed to work, but it's been a challenge. And so luckily the newer phones are now all using the same Nano 3-in-1 SIM cards for Sprint, so that's actually become less of a problem. But older models of phones still require certain special SIM cards, and you have to know to get those. And there's a limited number of places you can get them. On the other hand, T-Mobile has a totally different network and a different approach. Frankly, their SIM cards are, God, I'm not trying to insult T-Mobile, but AOL CDs, right? You can find them everywhere, right? You guys remember when you used to get those in the mail all the time? You can walk in anywhere and get a T-Mobile card. One of the T-Mobile folks was in our office the other day, and we said, oh, we don't have any T-Mobile SIM cards. And he said, oh, I have 50 in my backpack, right? These are much, much more accessible. So you don't have to spend 10 bucks and have them overnight shipped to you, right? We can acquire these things. They do cost money. I'm kidding when I said AOL CDs. We don't want to just throw them in the garbage like those things ended up. But they're much easier to get a hold of, and they work with every device. So this simplifies right off the bat the user experience that you're going to have when you're trying to activate these devices, which is a huge, huge deal because we had a ton of complaints that it was really complicated to get phones on the network previously. So that kind of goes away, which is a big deal. And also I'm noting the 3-in-1, the industry itself has gone through some iterations on the size of the SIM cards, and some genius figured out that they can just make little pieces of plastic around the larger ones and you just push them out. So basically this card should fit any device. So one card to rule them all. Another thing that we've been limited on, which we are no longer limited on, which I'm super excited about, is stuff like this. Who ever thought that I would wear a watch? Because I don't wear pants or a watch normally. Generally speaking, this has been a super fun adventure for me. It's kind of changed my life. In fact, I'm hoping that I'll be a little bit less pounds up here by next year thanks to this thing. Counts all my calories. Really like this thing. But I'm also super excited that it has a cell phone on it, which I think is kind of game changing. Haven't actually figured out whether it's really practical to replace my cell phone in full, but I have secretly taken a couple conference calls in a hot tub, which is pretty exciting, and because it's waterproof too. And no, I'm not pitching Apple's products necessarily, but I am pitching the fact that where these SIM cards are going and where these mobile services are ending up is definitely changing, right? So you're going to see these devices, not just IoT, but you're going to see them on your wrist, you're going to see them in tablets, you're probably going to see them again in laptops. There was kind of a previous attempt to ship Chromebooks where they already had a cell phone service in them or data services in them that kind of died out, but I have a feeling that's going to come back. We're seeing cars that come with cellular service built into the cars. All these things are most likely going to be powered by an eSIM or a SIM somewhere, and so if we ride this wave, we're hoping that we can help you guys get these different devices connected. Because at the end of the day, the customers are still usually very confused by all this, and they need folks to help them out with it. And that's why I think that T-Mobile with us and with you guys will still be very successful, because you guys can basically teach the customers how this works, and you can bundle these packages into all these different types of devices, and you can sell it to the customer. And frankly, the customer doesn't care as much about the price as they do about it working, right? So they do care about price, but they're even more sensitive if it doesn't work or it confuses them. So we think this is a big opportunity. The other thing that I just want to point out back to the network side, how many of you guys heard my talk previously about cell phone towers and outsourcing them? And okay, so not a lot of you. So I chose not to talk about this again because of time constraints here, but a little known secret in the cell phone world, who can guess as to what is required to set up a cell phone tower? You can just shout out a couple things. What do you think you need to do to set up a cell phone tower? A license. You need a license for the spectrum and to actually put it in a particular location. That's true. What else? Land. That's a big one. You need real estate. Right? You need a physical place to put it. And let's go a little deeper on that real estate. Right? You're in the middle of a big city. Are we talking about just a plot of land that happened to be sitting there that's worth $10 million or $1 million in San Francisco? Who knows? That's got nothing on it? Or are we talking about somebody who's already got a building? Right? So in some cases in a city, you're putting this on a roof. So these companies came along and said, all these cell phone companies are really bad at negotiating with landlords, right? That's they're just not good at that. What if we do that for them? And what if we also take care of some of the licensing and the zoning and et cetera, et cetera? It turns out that was a really good idea. If I had chosen another business to be in like 10 or 15 years ago, it'd probably be this. Because these guys are kind of secretly powering Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. All these guys have ended up on the same space as the same plots of land. In fact, when you look at the towers, you'll see multiple different looking antennas. And a lot of those are the different carriers, but they're all on the same tower. Right? Because a lot of the work is now going into the spectrum, not the location. So when these guys also come out and they say, we have the same 99% coverage as everyone else, that's why. They're just having these guys do it. And these guys are the ones who literally, there's some really cool videos from American Tower actually, of them having to upgrade a tower that's on top of a mountain in Tahoe, where they had the helicopter and the engineer who had to change the antennas out. It's pretty cool. Totally not what I'm into. I'm definitely never gonna do that. But anyway, the point being that as you watch these networks, it's really much more interesting to look at the spectrum and the coverage, the spectrum and the technology behind it versus the physical coverage. So that's kind of changing as well. But this is going to be the big factor that I know you guys all relate to. Most of these mobile companies, they have a certain amount of capacity on their networks. The reality is they're really selling wholesale services to us, and to consumers, they're really kind of tricking you based on statistics into buying plans that are based on capacity, right? They don't want to sell too much and then have people use too much, and then the network slows down and it costs them a lot of money on the backhaul. But they still need to be competitive. If you actually read their quarterly reports, which are all public, you will actually learn that they judge themselves and the industry judges them on the annual revenue per user or active subscriber, right? So they want to see a certain number roughly to show the business is healthy. And they look at the rough dollars per gig that they advertise, or basically capacity numbers based on usage, right? So if you actually break down most of the pricing that you'll find out there that is public, we're ending up in around $4 per gig in T-Mobile world versus $8 per gig in Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint. Right, which is why T-Mobile historically has been so disruptive, because that's a real FU to all the other carriers, right? If somebody comes in and halves the price and successfully then pitches it and makes it look cool, that's really disruptive. And that's why T-Mobile has been so disruptive. Ironically, on the flip side, and even though the folks from T-Mobile obviously are slightly biased, they also are aware, and why they're excited about this merger, that T-Mobile owns a lot less spectrum. Right, and Sprint owns a whole bunch of spectrum. So the combination of those two carriers will actually hopefully beat what is currently available to AT&T and Verizon, who still beat both T-Mobile and Sprint. And we're going to talk about that more in a minute. But this is going to be a big driver for you guys. You're going to be able to now access lower pricing in places where you're just going to want heavy data usage, and I think that that's going to be a big opportunity for you guys. I kind of dig into logistics here. The one downside we're going to have with porting, but it is temporary, or with T-Mobile right now, but it is temporary, is if you're activating a smartphone, we cannot yet port numbers. That is not a deficiency in T-Mobile's system. It is ours. We're trying not to roll out products that require lots of support tickets anymore. We've decided that it's worth it to get it right on the technology first, rather than torture you guys with back and forth with support tickets, and also with labor costs from our staff who have to manage the support tickets. So today we're not actually accepting port requests on the T-Mobile side. You can still do them automatically on the Sprint side if you're trying to activate a smartphone, and you can activate a new number on the T-Mobile side. I expect this to be resolved within a month. And then you'll be able to actually port your existing smartphone number over to T-Mobile as well. But the reason I'm less concerned about that is our bigger opportunity here, in my opinion, is data. And nobody cares what the phone number is on a data device for the most part, right? They just want the backup internet connection to work, or the backup data connection to work, whatever it is on your cell phone. And so the number's not as important. So we deprioritize this, and this will not be in our initial launch here. But the rest of the things I'm talking about, including that price point, are basically available now. And then in terms of the back end, we are directly integrated to T-Mobile's APIs now. So, well, not directly, we go through a third party, but it's instantaneous. That's the important part that I'm trying to drive here. We have a portal of our own, and that portal now gives you access to pull out one of those SIM cards, type in the number, hit activate, and you are up and going. You will get a phone number in the portal that relates to that SIM card, and you can then take that SIM card and put it into a MiFi device, or a Cradle Point, or a Netgear backup device, or a Cisco RV3, I don't know, it's on the slide in a second, I forget the model number, so that you can provide this service to your customers. The other thing that's different than Sprint right now is we don't actually have usage feeds. Again, we wanted to get this out, and it turns out that with Sprint, you pay for every megabyte you use, right? With T-Mobile, they actually do the network management for you. So basically, you pick a plan in advance of how much data you might use up to that you want to spend money on for the LTE allotment. And then if you go over that, they just slow you down. So since you don't really have to manage the data and throttle it and need any of those controls, while we do plan to offer them, we did not offer them on the first day, because we don't see a reason to offer them from a sales perspective. We want to start getting activations and subscribers and testers, and we don't need that in order for you to do that. But this is coming. We expect to have these feeds so that you'll be able to see, just like you do with Sprint, how much data your customer used, and that'll also let you guys have some creative price plans that you can invent based on your corporate customers. Another thing that T-Mobile is known for is roaming. Turns out that Sprint has also been expanding on their roaming as well. So I'm going to touch on this a little bit. Today, we do not allow roaming. We have 0 customers who have roaming. The issue is pretty simple. In the US and with our portal, you guys are used to instant pretty much everything. So you can go load an app, and it'll tell you how much data you've used this month. And in a lot of cases, that data feed will be reasonably up to date, often within 15-minute intervals. If you actually use our Sprint integration, it is an actual 15-minute interval. If I use data right now and I go check in about 15 minutes, it will show on the portal. That also allows us to have protection on fraud. And fraud is at the point now where these data speeds are so high that if you're getting billed per gigabyte at $8 and somebody downloads 100 gigs within an hour, which is becoming possible on these networks, or within several hours anyway, you're going to get that bill, and you're not going to be able to cut them off, and you're not going to be able to manage that. We've decided that some of those windows are tolerable limits for fraud, but when it comes to roaming international, sometimes those feeds come in 2 weeks later, which means that a fraudster has a 2-week period to defraud you, which gets real expensive. Like, we're talking $100,000 plus bills. For some of you guys, that is a business game-changing fraud hit that could even bankrupt your business, right? So that's a big, big risk. Flip side is I didn't really care about this before with Sprint because it didn't really work anyway, so we kind of just backburnered it. But I've actually been testing this. I took a trip to Australia and New Zealand. I've been to Europe now, and I enabled roaming on our Sprint agreement for LTE and GSM. It turns out those rates have also come down, and in some cases it is actually cheaper to roam. For example, in Germany it was cheaper than it was in the US for data, ironically. So you can't contractually sell services out there, so you can't say, well, it's so much cheaper, I'm going to open a shop in Germany, but use the US agreement that we have. But I do know that a lot more people are mobile, and they're starting to want to be able to roam, and then it's a deficiency to you guys, especially with corporate customers, to be unable to do this. So we do plan to start testing the ability to do this and figure out where those fraud thresholds are, where you can sell to your customers, maybe you put a deposit down, we do a credit check, and we make sure that if there is a fraud incident, it's not going to bankrupt us, and then you guys are responsible for mitigating that risk and picking good customers and teaching them on your side. So that's probably what we're going to do here to start, and we're going to see how that goes. So that is something we intend to offer, even though it is not available yet. We have a whole bunch of talks on billing tomorrow, billing, invoicing, taxes, etc. But we have fit T-Mobile squarely into this. So we are pretty excited about this. One of the complaints, again, we had on the Sprint side, we actually thought it was cool that you guys could make up your own price plans, and basically you could game the system. So if you knew that a customer had one heavy user and 10 users who weren't so heavy, you could sell them a 100 gig plan, and if they only actually used 20 gigs, you'd put the difference in your pocket. That's your profit. All right, so we thought that was pretty cool. And that freaked everybody out. So everyone was like, I don't know how to calculate this. I have no idea how much my customer uses in data. I don't want to deal with this. I just want to set it up and know that I'm going to make $5 a month. So T-Mobile gives us that option as the alternative. You can sell a plan. We discounted a little bit from the market rates T-Mobile pitches it at, so you have a margin already. But in reality, if you try and sell smartphone plans, somebody's going to go say, well, Metro PCI or I don't know, TracFone is cheaper, right? So you're probably going to lose that battle. It's too crowded. But on the data side, there's pretty much nobody, right? Nobody is selling a bundle where you get a cradle point and a 12-month agreement with data backup, plus your Office IT management and your screen sharing and video sharing and desk phones. There's not really any plans there. So it's kind of greenfield. So our theory is that you guys can now tinker with this and figure out how to bundle a $45 a month data backup plan with a $200 piece of hardware, a bunch of desk phones, a couple of cell phones maybe, and offer that to a customer at, let's say, $300-400 a month, right? And you just kind of flat rate it for them. Your total overall revenue goes up as a whole because you're selling more services to them. So even though the margins might not be as healthy on the data side as they might have been on like a VoIP phone, the net overall account size is going to be much larger, and the amount of revenue you're getting total is much larger. So we think that the attractiveness of this is that your overall account size is going to be higher, plus the customer is going to be more dependent on you. They're going to call you when they need stuff. So as soon as they want to add even more services, they'll be able to do that, and we'll be providing a billing engine that allows you to tie all that together on one bill. A couple comments on support. So with Sprint, you often have to call us to do stuff on support because, there were a lot of restrictions and a lot of gotchas. This is just a SIM card that has a network backing it. Ultimately, the smartphone device is a regular smartphone, and it's going to be up to you to figure out how to manage that. So that is something that we are actually not going to do a lot to help you with. There are some folks who do constant updates. Hey, 6 new models came out this week. We want you to know about them. We're not going to spend a lot of time teaching you about the actual handset market. So that's going to be a place where we expect the resellers to invest on their own. You guys test. You buy your own test phone. You figure out if it's awesome, and then you decide that that's the model you're going to sort of focus on and sell to your customers. We think that's actually an opportunity for you guys because you can differentiate yourself. The market's starting to get flooded with these internet backup devices. It's also becoming more common to have unlocked phones that people just are okay with plunking the $900 down up front. You may remember a couple years ago, it used to be very uncommon to just buy an unlocked phone. You'd expect it to be subsidized, but now people actually like that they can buy an unlocked phone. So we expect you guys to be able to take advantage of it. Kind of a high level on why we're doing this. Some folks said to me, A, if Sprint and T-Mobile are merging, why are you bothering? And B, hey, there's not, like even Patrick was questioning in the beginning with me, why are we selling data services when there's not a ton of money to be made? And the honest answer is that I think that people are also not just going to keep buying VoIP phones. And I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow in my keynote. But I think that most offices are going to expect to get an entire communications suite that works together. We've seen that a lot with some of these up-and-coming companies that Patrick talked about, like Slack, where they're now trying, they started with chat, but now they're trying to put in video screen sharing, and they're trying to put in voice calling, and they're trying to put in conference bridges, because their customers expect all of those things to come from one place. And some of these guys even expect the apps like CRMs and whatnot to talk to each other. So we think this is just another piece of the puzzle. In terms of the specific suggested uses we have on day one, we think data backup's a big winner. Cradle point's at the top. My favorite model, actually, but I don't know that I want to vouch for this yet, but I'm going to do it anyway, is on the bottom. There's a Cisco RV. I thought I put the model number on here. Well, I didn't. I will find the model number and somehow post it somewhere, but I believe it's the RV425P. It's a PoE switch, so if it's a 6-7 person office, you get a USB port on there that you can put a dongle in that you put the SIM card into. That's your wireless backup. You can put 2 physical landline connections in there, so maybe a cable modem and a DSL modem, or cable and fiber, or something like that. And the ports are PoE on half of the switch, so you can plug in the phone. So basically with one device, you can provide 2 or even 3 backup solutions for internet and phone. And it has a VPN client and all that jazz on it. It's about $300, so it's pretty inexpensive to get all of those features in there. Another option, which I shouldn't be telling you about because it kind of doesn't work, but I'm so excited about this that I'm going to tell you about it anyway because I've been using it with my phone. And I'm happy to show you guys this if you're curious. Apple is kind of secretly, quietly adding the ability on their handset. How many people have heard of eSIMs? All right, cool. So a lot of you guys, if you haven't heard of eSIMs, it's basically electronic SIM. The idea is rather than a SIM card, you can take a picture of a QR code basically on the iPhone, and that has the information about the SIM card in it, right? So basically there's no more SIM card. Now the carriers all don't like this for a variety of reasons, so it hasn't actually taken off, which is why we can't actually sell it because we don't have a portal to put the numbers in, but there's some secret ways to do it anyway, so we're doing it anyway. But ultimately, this is not productized yet. But what Apple is kind of secretly doing behind the scenes is they're giving you controls on your native contacts and your native dialer and your native applications where you can pick which network you're going to use for data, you can pick which network you're going to use for voice, and you can pick that on a granular level per contact, for example, right? And the entire interface already now supports this. Right now we also have a problem with Sprint where our integration does not work on iPhone 10s because it uses VoLTE. So basically I'm hoping, and that's why I'm telling you about this, that by the end of the year we will have fixed the VoLTE integration piece in conjunction with the eSIM piece. And you will actually be able to sell your customers a phone that comes with 2 networks. I'm being told that I gotta hurry up. So 2 networks, and basically the customers can choose from 2 native numbers. We can also, however, already simulate this with a mobile app, right? So the usefulness of this is limited at the moment. It's actually more useful to use the mobile app for now. So my hope is that you'll be able to sell the native regular service today with the mobile app and tease the customers with this idea of, have 2 phone numbers on your phone, a work number and a personal number, et cetera. And then once Apple and the carriers kind of get it together on this whole thing, you can transition them to the more native stuff, and you'll still be in the mix for offering that. I'm going to skip that slide here. The last thing I want to leave you with is a comparison chart. So this is the big differences that we have between the 2 carriers. I want to note that they basically fall into device capabilities that from our side of what we can support, and network controls. We have less network controls today on T-Mobile, but I don't think they're as important. but you have much more access to devices and what you can do with those devices. And this is the main differentiator on why I think it's so important to have two choices. The very last slide I'm going to skip to here is the competitive landscape. This is the spectrum stuff that everyone talks about. In fact, who sees something in here that one of these does not look like the other? Which one? Nail it out. No. Look in the bot. Dish! Somebody said it. Dish. Why the hell is Dish in here? Okay. So it turns out there's a war for spectrum right now, and Dish had a bunch of it, and they still have a bunch of it, I believe, unless they sold it off already. This slide might be a little old. But the point is that this is where the new game for wireless is now, is who's going to control the spectrum on the different bands, and the colors indicate that high level, mid-level, and low-level frequency. And so this is where I think a lot of the activity is going to be. And if you look in terms of the merger, today T-Mobile and Sprint are on the right-hand side of the screen. But if you put those two blocks together in terms of number of subscribers, and you look at the spectrum that they own if those two companies merge, you're going to end up with a chart that's a little bit closer to this. We'll have 3 carriers, but they'll all be of much similar size. And when that happens, it means that the combined Sprint T-Mobile have about as much money to invest in the network as the other guys do, except they'll already have an advantage where they have a lot more spectrum. So we're going to see if the FCC makes a big stink about this. They might make them sell off some of the spectrum to make it fair. But if they don't, Sprint and T-Mobile together will actually come out probably ahead in spectrum and in subscribers ultimately, which is why it's a pretty good gamble. Of course, they said that with Nextel, and they said that with whatever else they did before, so obviously the devil's in the details. We'll see what happens. So that's what's going to happen with the T-Mobile. For now, what's important to you, try it out, play with it, put some bundles together. One really important thing I do need to stress, even though I'm 3 minutes over, is our relationship with T-Mobile requires us to sell these things as bundles. Please do not go home and post a website that says you now sell T-Mobile service. We can't use their brand in the marketing, so you can, it's a little weird how you have to do this, but it's really important. You can't say that you're a partner of T-Mobile, but if your customers ask you who is providing the cell phone service, you can say things like you're buying wholesale time on the T-Mobile network to offer the service. So basically you're a user of the network, but you're not actually a partner of T-Mobile's. That's really important because they have spent a lot of money on their brand, and you will dilute their brand if you go and say that you are the same thing, right? So they're very cautious of that. Same with Sprint, by the way, if you didn't know that. And then the other big thing is to make sure that you actually try out those devices before you sell them to clients and know how you're going to service them for fraud. So those are my big 2 things. Questions or no questions? Am I in trouble? Yeah. I'm asking Miriam. We'll do 1 question real quick. Are extensions going to work on it? Good question. So our old pitch on Sprint was that you could extension dial in the native dialer. We are not in the call path on T-Mobile, so you will not be able to extension dial. My hope, however, on that combined dual SIM idea is that on the business line, if you use Sprint, and on your personal line you use T-Mobile, you will eventually be able to do the extension and all the regular dialing on your business line with the native dialer, and use the T-Mobile side for the personal calls, and then you'll get that back. But we need Sprint to fix the VoLTE piece. 1 more question for Ron. I'm getting in trouble. You can do static IPs on data. I thought that was a thing nobody would want, so the fact that you're asking me that right off on the announcement tells me maybe we should have added that. It's very easy to add that feature. I just didn't think anyone would want it. So if you're telling me you want static IPs, we can look into adding that to the portal, and then I see a bunch of people nodding, so clearly we should have added that. So yeah, so these are the types of feedback we would love to see on the forums, and we would love to see in emails, and please, please, please give us all this data because I'm gonna get in trouble with Miriam if I keep talking here. Thank you all for joining us. I really hope you come along for the ride on this.
Awesome. We are a few minutes over, but go ahead and take a quick break, about 5 minutes or so if you can come back, as we have Chris from UMA that'll be speaking, and he's really exciting. So enjoy your break, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
have that information.
All right, everybody. Well, we're running a few minutes behind, but I think you're really going to like our next speaker. So Chris from UMA would actually joined us last year, and everyone loved him so much. We loved him a ton. So we wanted to bring him back, and so he could bless you all with his presence. So this is Chris Fergie from UMA, and he will be speaking to you.
Test, test, test. Good morning, everybody. How's the session so far today? Everybody been pleased with the information we learned about Kazoo 5.0 and all the cool functionality coming? Yes. So today, I'm going to take a little bit of a different tact from the presentation last year. So I want to walk you through the obligatory overview of UMA, of course, but similar to last year, walk you through the view on the market opportunity, some of the broader cloud trends that are transpiring now that present an opportunity for all of us to differentiate together, and then specifically talk about the point of view on how you can differentiate in this space. And I'll share with you some examples of what UMA has done to differentiate in the space and really carve out some great niches for us in different markets that we target. So how many people have actually heard of UMA or have a family member that uses our residential phone service at home? Yes, all right. So that's how most folks know us best, is from our residential VoIP heritage, which is still actually a growing space for us, believe it or not, in the market. But the company decided to take a journey about 6 years ago and branch out into the small business segment. So we have our existing residential offerings, which have branched out into home security and video camera solutions, but we've really amassed a great portfolio on the business side that allows us to address a wide swath of the market for communications needs. And it starts with our UMA Office solution, which is purpose-built for the small business segment. So it's a curated offering, all-inclusive in terms of functionality, priced at $19.95 a month, and flexible in how we can deploy for these users. It's really intended to make it straightforward for that small company. Think of organizations 1 to 25 employees in size. But we also expanded into the enterprise segment with our acquisition of Voxter Communications, which has been a long-standing contributor and participant in the Kazoo ecosystem, about 16 months ago. And that became the basis for our UMA Enterprise offering, which is targeted upmarket at larger accounts. It's more of a bespoke solution, so we heavily leverage the flexible API architecture in Kazoo to develop custom solutions that really solve fundamental business process issues for organizations. And I'll share some examples of how this has really allowed us to stand out and differentiate and separate in the market. So if you look at the broader market opportunity and what's happening, there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity for customers and organizations to address in the US and Canada alone. There are millions of businesses out there, many who still have not made the foray or the transition into cloud-delivered services and are really ripe for the right types of companies to come in and present them with a cohesive, simple to understand, flexible offering for their business. And it ranges all the way up to very large enterprises, and many of them mimic the desire and the need for having simplicity in their deployment model. So if you look at the overall view of what will happen for us over the next 5 years, it's rosy, right? There's a phenomenal opportunity for growth in our space as cloud continues to accelerate for communications. And what's been interesting is if you look back 5 years ago and what we were selling solutions at when cloud was really emerging in our segment, the average revenue that was being charged per user was actually higher. And that began to come down. As competition intensified in our space, we saw more price pressure, but that's starting to turn around a little bit again. And we're actually going to see a forecasted increase in the average revenue per user over the next few years. And this really tucks into what Carl and Patrick and Darren were sharing earlier. There's a lot of opportunity to provide a more holistic solution into customers that allows you to monetize in different ways and really strengthen that bond that you have with an organization to make them more sticky. And that stickiness can really transcend what we're providing purely around communications or traditional communication solutions today. So if you look at some of the broader trends that are happening in the cloud market, there's some interesting areas to note that are both risk factors that we always need to keep an eye on, but more importantly, opportunities for us to capitalize on with solutions that we deliver to customers. So the broader cloud wars have not slowed down. In fact, we've seen this intensify between Microsoft and Google and Amazon. The good news is it's really democratized or decreased the ability to build solutions and deliver solutions in a cloud-delivered manner. But it also means that these folks are being more creative in how they differentiate against each other. And it's forced some changes, like, for instance, Google entering into our space, the Google Voice offering tied into G Suite. Now, it's a lot more complicated than what we deliver, but for large organizations, that may cause them pause and allow them to kind of envision a model where they could leverage that solution bundled in with G Suite, and that was in reaction to what Microsoft has been doing for a long time with Office 365, but it also triggered a reaction by Amazon where they've taken the Chime offering, which is their conferencing solution, collaboration solution, and now you can assign DIDs to it and deliver soft phone-based services into end users, knowledge workers. Again, there's a lot of opportunity for us to differentiate in how we provide a superior experience against what they're doing, but it's something that we want to keep an eye on as they continue to battle with each other, and there's little repercussions for how customers may contemplate the way that we're selling and positioning services into those businesses. The platform capabilities has been one of the most exciting opportunities in the space over the last 5 years, and I think this excitement is only going to further accelerate for us. There's the ability to rapidly develop new applications in a very modern way on these architectures. And these applications can be complementary to what we do as businesses delivering services into customers. But it's also trained the mindset of these customers to expect flexibility in how solutions can be melded together with the business needs that organization has, and whether they do it themselves or they look to somebody that they can partner with and craft solutions that really solve pain points in their organization that transcend communications and the different modalities to other business processes and tools they use to run their organization efficiently. And all of this can be, again, complementary to what we do. It's another vehicle to build solutions around Kazoo and the portfolio that we have to be even more meaningful and disruptive in businesses in terms of that value that we can provide organizations. Artificial intelligence has been particularly interesting to watch as well. There have been rapid advances in the capabilities of this technology coupled with machine learning. And frankly, it's really made it palatable for many organizations. The sheer processing power that is available by using public cloud for artificial intelligence and machine learning makes it realistic now to apply that technology to a whole swath of use cases that can be very meaningful for organizations and really optimize the way that they engage with their own customers. It also allows us to create insights for knowledge workers or call center managers, line of business managers within organizations so that they have the right information at the right time to make proactive decisions to run that organization much more efficiently than it could be before. And you can think of simple examples in our space. Google Dialogflow is a great example around contact center. How I can optimize that experience for contact center agents so that I'm presenting the right information in a natural language process to customers and then popping it into a real-time person to finish up the conversation and accomplish what that caller wanted when they were engaging with an organization. And then facial recognition is also really interesting and equally creepy, by the way. But there's a real opportunity to begin applying this into the work environment. So if you imagine our space, Uma, for instance, has a camera that we sell in the residential market now that has facial recognition built into it. I could apply that in the workforce. So when I walk into a conference room, I immediately recognize, oh, that's Dayton that walked into the conference room. I know he has a meeting scheduled right now. Spin up a conference bridge, spin up the video conferencing form. There's a lot of inherent power in the capabilities that can be unlocked by the broader cloud trends. And then finally, the Internet of Things, which has always been a great way to loosely describe lots and lots of different technologies. But there's a real opportunity around the connectivity of devices that will be underscored by the mobile networks too, by the way, but allowing us to pervasively deploy different components in organizations that are connected and we can tie into and have data feeds that, again, give us actionable intelligence, or they make that end user's life simpler in an environment. Something to keep a close eye on and something to capitalize on, frankly, as you weave that into your portfolio. So I won't belabor this too much. We didn't coordinate our presentations, but I had this in here already. There is a massive opportunity around where mobile networks are going. And you heard some of the data around the spectrum advantages, the broader 5G strategies. The key here is this is going to be a disruptor for how we deliver services as communications companies into our clients. The mobile network has really accelerated in its capabilities, providing latency that is substantially lower than it ever was, and bandwidth that is going to be substantially higher than was previously available. And what this means is now we can enable new services to sell into our customers. And I'll give you a good example. So for Uma, on our Office platform, roughly 30% of our customer base still runs on DSL. Less than 10 megs down, less than a meg up. And they're paying $70, $80 a month for that service. And the quality is still subpar. The mobile networks are advancing so much with LTE Advanced, which is 4.5G and 5G, that will be able to deliver consistent voice quality on these networks, much like we do in a wireline fashion, and really turn on organizations to connect immediately. And you can imagine a franchise owner of a retail store. They may need to have their local LEC or cable company dig trench into their facility, and they may not be able to operate that business for 3 months. What if you could turn it on immediately with a cell network? What if you could deliver quality of service that provides superior voice experience and layer in other data services, both in a primary and backup fashion? This is a real game changer for a lot of organizations, and it's a real pain point for many companies in the market. We've taken our first foray into this space, and we passionately believe in the future opportunity here. Earlier this year, we announced a LTE adapter for our residential market. We build our own hardware, something that we built. And we're powering voice today in our residential space over the LTE network without VoLTE. It's just regular data. And we're powering our home security offering, and it's working phenomenally. And this is just a small sliver of the capabilities of solutions that are going to begin to emerge on the market over the next 12 to 18 months. So when we look at our space, boy, there's a lot of companies up there. And these are only the big ones. It always caught me by surprise when I saw a report from Frost & Sullivan, it must have been 5 years ago now, that at that time, there were over 100 providers of UCaaS or hosted PBX solutions in the US alone. It's a crowded market out there. There are a lot of people that are vying for the share. It's a big pie, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of people that are vying for the share and vying for the attention of customers that they're trying to target in the space. And this puts an onus on us to figure out how we are different, how we get past the noise in the market and all these solutions, both traditional competitors in the space and emerging threats from adjacencies around our space, like Twilio moving in on the CPaaS side, like Zoom moving in with their Zoom phone solution. We really need to have a crisp approach to getting that right message to the right customer. So if you look at the core fundamental strategies of how we should differentiate our businesses, it centers around these key areas. Define your target market first. Understand and deliver a great customer experience. Make sure you're building unique value levers or value drivers. And look at how you horizontally expand your reach. Lots of folks think about our space purely in a vertical fashion. What other solutions can I build into a UC stack, essentially? But we're all in a unique position to think more broadly about what can be delivered into that business and how we provide value that uniquely solves pain points those customers are feeling. So if we dig into these areas and look at how we can craft a great story and a successful strategy, the first one is around defining that target market. You should have a very clear picture of what your primary target market is, and that could be size-based, so small customers, less than 25 employees, be expanded mid-market, maybe I want 100 employee to 1,000 employee companies, or it could be specific vertical markets that you go after. But the key here is you need to understand the unique needs of those customers, because if you try to be everything to everyone, then it becomes difficult to provide unique functionality, unique value that locks you in a very sticky relationship to those customers. We were purposeful in how we've done this over the years at Ooma. Ooma Office, for instance, is very much built for that small business customer. It is not trying to be everything to everyone. It focuses on simplicity of deployment. So if you think of that residential user where Heritage came from, that same person may be a business owner. They have no idea how technology works. They're very unsophisticated. You need to make it so simple they're literally plugging into the wall and doing nothing else. They're value sensitive in that segment, for instance. And we're telephony oriented in nature. We don't try to be a full UCaaS solution to those customers because many of them, frankly, don't care. They want to have rock solid phone service and delivered in a great value at a price point that's interesting to them. And by the way, that parallels large distributed enterprises. So you think of the retail vertical, they may have thousands of locations, but each of those locations operates just like a small business customer from a needs perspective. The pain is the same for them. Similarly, as you go up market, defining how you're going to serve different segments, again, size-based, and we're much more prescriptive in how we do this with our enterprise offering, and going after those specific vertical niches. And oftentimes, they have really unique requirements that an off-the-shelf platform doesn't solve for them. So it presents a great opportunity for us to be different in that message, to get through the noise of what they're hearing from everybody else in the space, and form a bond with that customer that is difficult to ever unseat. And then make sure when you craft your marketing strategy, your go-to-market process with your sales team, that it's tailored specifically to what they care about. If you're out there blanket marketing, hosted PBX or just voice services, you'll get lost in the noise. Be very purposeful in your intent and messaging to those customers, and it'll allow you to get through to the right individuals. The next component of differentiation is around customer experience. And this is still lost on a lot of organizations, and it's a very real pain point. People have issues in our space. We have many customers that have come from large competitors in this space, and they had a terrible deployment experience. They had an issue with reliability. They had an issue with voice quality. So if you're purposeful in how you design your deployment process to make it as simple as possible for those customers, that goes a long way. And that includes your methodology and how you project manage and onboard those customers. That creates a stickiness, again, with that customer, that you're really there as a partner for them to usher them through this process and make sure that they feel successful. And then measure after the fact. It is way more expensive to acquire a new customer than maintain existing healthy customers and expand your share of wallet with them. So you need to be sure that you're proactively reaching out to those customers, measuring with CSAT or NPS or whatever methodology you want, but you need a pulse on your business and have a team that's available. It could be as simple as one person if you don't have a large organization, but somebody that cares about how that customer feels, if that customer is happy with you, and being proactive about capturing any dissatisfaction before they turn into a detractor, essentially, in your organization. Unique value levers. And this is really one of the most powerful things about 2600 Hz and Kazoo. We have an underlying platform here that is highly flexible. That's very different compared to most folks in this space. So define that fundamental strategy on how you want to compete. It could be you go after the SMB segment, we've simplified it all, we provide value, and that's it. And that's okay too, because that serves a segment of the market. It could be that you want to craft solutions specific to larger customers based upon pain points or vertical market specific integrations that allow you to stand out and shift the conversation away from we're just providing telephony or just providing collaboration communication solutions. We're providing offerings that are unique to solving real business problems in your organization. We've done this in multiple examples, and it's created utterly sticky relationships. One customer, who's a large pizza chain here in the US, has been a customer for a very long time. The reason why we won that opportunity with this customer is a custom created or built portal for franchise owners of this pizza chain that pulls in all the metrics from the CDR, essentially, from Kazoo, and mashes that up in a portal that provides overall performance and health of the stores, including financial performance. And that's what a franchisee owner cares about. Voice is voice for many of them. They still do a lot of it, but the fact that there was an offering that gave them the data that they needed to understand how each of their stores were performing set us apart. And nobody's had a chance to go into that account because they have not created the same solution. Similarly, we have worked with other organizations to custom build workflows for them that others wouldn't frankly do. There are a lot of organizations that have internally developed tools and processes, and our answer is yes on our enterprise platform, for instance. If you have a unique need, something that's different out there, we'll work with you and we'll build you a solution for it. And you have that same opportunity and power in the platform that underlines what you deliver to your customers today. And again, that makes you very, very sticky into those organizations. And you can think about being proactive. Build for a specific customer that comes in and then replicate that within a vertical market and go after other organizations in that space, whether it's healthcare and you're going after the practitioners like physicians and veterinarians who all have a set of tools that they need to integrate in with, whether it's the retail market, integrating in with point of sale systems, mashing that up with calling data into those organizations. There's a lot of opportunity to approach this in a slightly different fashion than the rest of the players in the market that lets you break through that noise. Then the final part is around horizontally expanding your reach. So if you think about the conversation that we had today, mobile seems like a natural first approach for you. So you can easily, for customers, consolidate multiple point solutions that they're billing for today. So I can handle your cell phones for you, your mobile phones for you, in addition to your communications needs for the organization. Nobody else is really quite doing it the same way in the space today. That's easy, low-hanging fruit. But there are other solutions that are complementary to what we do around voice in the space today. The simplest example is really guiding that customer through the process of deploying the network. Whether you're selling access or not, provide a seamless experience to them by deploying the routers, deploying the Ethernet switches with PoE, and managing all of that in an effective way for your customers. You can generate increased stickiness in those accounts, increased visibility into those accounts, and really provide that peace of mind into a customer that allows them to know you are there to support them as a key partner of their organization. And then finally, solutions beyond what we do today in voice. You already have a footprint and a relationship in that customer's account. What other solutions can you position into that customer? And this is where you think a little bit more broadly, LTE backup for many organizations. What organization wouldn't pay a reasonable price point to have the peace of mind that if primary connectivity went down, that they could still operate their business, both on the voice and the data perspective? What about other security solutions or facilities monitoring solutions? The more that you can expand that reach horizontally, the more you set yourself apart from everybody that's thinking vertically in the space of what else I can build in the feature stack, and creates more value for that customer. There are a lot of emerging technologies that will play into this space that allow you to form that deep bond with your customer and power it over 4.5G and 5G networks, for example. So if we look at the journey today and what we've gone through, always keep an eye on the key trends that are happening in the space. Sometimes they're a threat. Sometimes they present a great opportunity for you to leap out ahead of others and be much more proactive and rapidly iterate on solutions that you can deliver into your customers. And the market's been primed for folks to really have an open mind around this sort of approach. Be very purposeful in how you design your approach to the market. It is a crowded space, but if you know what you're going after, and you know what drives the decision-making and the value levers for that business, it makes it so much easier for you to reach the right audience and have a meaningful relationship with your customers. Capitalize on the ability to differentiate your offerings. Don't just be like everybody else. You have a powerful tool underneath all of this that really unlocks the capability for you to do so much more for those customers and make it difficult for everybody else that's selling effectively the same solutions to ever unseat you from that particular customer. And embrace those options to expand your own portfolio. Whether you stay near and dear to what's kind of done today around communications, or you look at other solutions that you can weave together and potentially integrate again into the offering, drive that value in a broader basis to your customers. You'll have a deeper relationship with them. It'll be much more meaningful to their business, and you'll make it exceptionally challenging for others to ever come in and unseat you from that account. Thank you.
And I know we're running short on time, but UMA is actually sponsoring the after party tonight. So if you have questions for Chris or the UMA team, go see him. Thank you very much. All right, next up, this is my favorite part of the program, so I hope you guys are excited. This is our first year we've had some pretty phenomenal analysts join us. So we are going to bring them up and pick their brilliant minds and hear about what's really happening in the industry, all the trends that are moving forward, and kind of where their thoughts are as far as how the future is going. To moderate this panel, we have our COO, Patrick Sullivan, and he will introduce our guest.
After you guys. Alrighty. First of all, this feels weird not to have a mic in my hand, so someone told me I look like the next Justin Timberlake. I will go with that. So JT is here to introduce this amazing panel. We have Blair, Phil, and John. So maybe starting with Phil, give a little introduction about yourself and your history. And I know it's pretty amazing.
Phil Edholm. I guess I used the mic, couldn't I? Phil Edholm, currently run a organization called PKA Consulting. Previously, I was the VP of Technology Strategy and Innovation at Avaya. After Avaya bought Nortel, I was the CTO at Nortel through most of the aughts. If you know things like VoIP, I was actually one of the original creators of VoIP back in the 90s. Frost & Sullivan gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award for creating the VoIP industry. Currently focus on where we're going as an industry, what's changing, and quite frankly, the market you're in and how fundamentally it's going to change over the next few years.
Wonderful. John.
Tough act to follow. I play guitar and piano. That's all you got to know. Yeah, anyways, I'm John Arnold. I am in Toronto, so home of where basketball rules for a little bit anyways. But I'm an independent analyst, and I'm actually the only independent tech analyst in Canada. And I focus on technologies around communications and collaboration. Been doing it for about 15 years or so. And I think the time is right for where this company is going in terms of where the market has opportunity. And I thought Chris's presentation really said a lot of what we're going to talk about now. So kudos, Chris, for that. And I'm a longtime UMA user, by the way. That's another conversation. But I'll pass it on to Blair. So we're all independent analysts, and I guess we're all also wearing the hat of BC Strategies, and Blair can add on to that as well. And we'll blow you away in about 7 seconds.
Don't know about that, but so I'm Blair Pleasant. I'm president and principal analyst of ComFusion. I'm an independent analyst based in Northern California, in beautiful wine country. I'm also one of the co-founders of UC Strategies, which is now BC Strategies. So as the unified communications market kind of has been in transition, we felt that BC, or business communications, is a more encompassing term for it. So BC Strategies is made up of independent analysts and consultants, so the three of us are representatives. So please go to the website. We've got lots of information to help buyers on their journeys, and we write about what's going on and helping people to better understand the business communications market.
Perfect. All right. Well, why don't we give you guys a softball? Where do you see the future of UC headed, and what do you want to see it, or where do you want to see it go? So who wants to go first?
Sure.
Perfect.
So basically, and I think we all agree on this, where we see things going is everything is coming together. So we used to have a lot of silos. We had contact center, unified communications, messaging, collaboration, conferencing. All these things were separate, and now it's all coming together. AI is underpinning everything. So instead of having all these silos, we're seeing everything come together. So if you're in a if you're editing a document, let's say, and you want to collaborate with a team member, you just do, click to collaborate, click to communicate. And if you want to set up a video call, you can just, click on that. So everything is becoming more of a seamless, holistic type of experience. And we're not there yet, but that's kind of where we're headed and where a lot of things are going. And AI, as I mentioned, is definitely going to be underpinning all of this. And we're seeing AI mainly in the contact center right now, but it is starting to spread out more to collaboration, to meetings. As Chris mentioned, facial recognition, you go in and the system will recognize you. AI can be used to assign tasks to make sure that the right information is brought up. So if you're having a meeting with somebody, the information, documents that you need will be there, so you don't have to go searching for things. So it's really going to be helping things move a lot more smoothly, and things that we do manually right now are going to be automated. So that's where I see things for now, anyway.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned AI, and I'm already getting off script, so I apologize. I feel like a lot of companies keep on talking about AI and all their investments in AI. Have you seen anything come to fruition where it's like, hey, you can actually see it and touch it and feel it, and you can see it actually moving the lever, or do you feel like this is the future?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
So, no, to both. I mean, so in, yesterday, if you go on nojitter.com, yesterday I posted an article about chatbots and how they don't work. So we are seeing a lot of companies deploying chatbots, and frankly, they suck for the most part. So I had this whole LinkedIn discussion where there were about 44 comments, so obviously I hit a nerve with it. So I think out of the 44 comments, maybe 3 people said, yeah, chatbots work, and everyone else said, no, it's awful. So there are a couple, so from the chatbot perspective, there are a couple ways that we're seeing it work, but it's still very, very early days. What we are seeing work as far as AI is helping to automate some manual tasks. So AI in the back end. So not so much in the front end where it's presented to customers, but more in the back end where it might be, filling out forms or pulling up information and doing things kind of in the back. So we're not seeing it as much, but it is happening.
Absolutely. John or Phil, anything you guys want to add?
I'd like to, if you don't mind, Patrick, come back a bit to your opening question on where UC is going. And to build on what Blair was saying, I think you have to keep in mind for you guys who are out there really trying to sell these as solutions to the marketplace, right? I mean, we've heard it already this morning. A lot of your end customers are still basically telephony 101 people. So you see what companies like 2600 Hertz are really good at is making it all look like magic, right? That it just all flows seamlessly. You stay on one page, one interface, etc. You don't have to really go anywhere. That's the stickiness that you want to keep customers working. The thing is, we all talk about UC as a solution, as something that's real. your customers don't think about UC, right? They think about applications that are easy to use. And as far as where it's going, I think the important thing is the value proposition. It's evolving from the heavy lifting of the technologies to make UC work. That's kind of like generation one, and we're kind of past that now. And I think the value where businesses really look for and what you can be selling is focus not so much on making all the things work together seamlessly, but how does this enable you to process information better, improve workflows, get better business outcomes. When you have those kind of conversations, that resonates with the buyers. They don't really think or care about UC as a term. That's an abstract concept. But the outcomes is what really matters and gets them buying this stuff.
So first off, UC is absolutely the wrong moniker because we're not unifying. We're converging with other stuff. So this is an industry that for the past 20 years has been about convergence. Anybody been in the industry 20 years? What was the first convergence we had? Voicemail and email, unified messaging. What was the second convergence we had? Voice over IP. That was a convergence in the data network. Then we've seen the latest convergence is convergence with personal productivity. How many of you in this room are knowledge workers? Anybody in this room a knowledge worker? Anybody manage their own time, keep their own calendar, make their own decisions about what they do with their work life? You have your own personal business process, you're all knowledge workers. Only 15% of the global population are knowledge workers. 85% are not knowledge workers. They don't work the way you work. North America, 22% are knowledge workers. 78% of the workforce doesn't work the way you work. The next convergence is that workforce converging communication and collaboration into their work processes. The difference is it's not the informal personal process that you use. I guarantee you, probably the majority of you use Outlook, Exchange, Office 365. A few of you maybe use Google. That's how you manage your life. Converging in that is what we've been doing for the last 10 years. And that's what UC was all about. The real next future in this industry, and what I think is going to be transformational, is converging communications with everything else. Whether you want to call it communications, collaboration, that functionality, it's how it integrates with applications, it's what CPaaS is, it's all those other things. And the reason it's really important, and this is a really critical thought process, the only value in UC for knowledge workers, what's the only thing from a business perspective it does? Only one thing. No, doesn't ever manage accountability. Productivity. It increases productivity, cuts costs. 22% of the workforce, if you can cut their costs by 5%, you have a value. On the other side, if you can automate processes in business and eliminate churn, reduce business process time, increase revenue, it has a much bigger impact on business. I think the next area of convergence, bringing UC into that non-knowledge worker is going to be the big transformation that's coming. And that's where the real opportunity is, where there's going to be revenue to be made because you can get outside of that productivity envelope.
Well, that is...
We're done?
We're done. All right. Thank you very much. That's amazing. To kind of go upon that, you know, who do you guys see that's actually going that direction then? You know, who's actually, everybody's talking about, hey, we are going with the AI, we are going, you know, to make people more productive. But do you actually feel like anybody's actually hitting stride yet? Or is that, you know, we're talking 30 days, months, years, like when is this going to actually be happening?
So I think the question, you kind of confused, brought in different things. I mean, clearly, the one big change so far has been CPaaS. I mean, if you look at CPaaS, the business case becomes really simple. And the easy way to understand CPaaS is the dentist's office, right? Everybody go to the dentist? Anybody not go to the dentist? What is the probability you will actually make a dentist appointment in 6 months when it's given to you, that card's given to you after your cleaning? If you are not reminded you have an appointment, what's the probability you will show up on that day for your next cleaning?
0.
It's about 50 to 60%. About 40 to 50% of people will naturally miss it for a whole bunch of reasons. So if you're a dentist and you got 3 cleaning chairs and you got 3 cleaning technicians and you book 3 people in, you have an absolute probability that 1/3 of your capacity will never be utilized. But you can't overbook like airlines, right? Imagine if you went to your dentist's office and you said, I'm here for my cleaning. They said, oh, we don't have an extra seat for you. You're going to have to come back later. What would your reaction be to that dentist's office? So adding CPaaS in decreases the missed appointments from 40% down to about 5%. Essentially, you recapture the utilization capacity of that third chair. It's a really simple business case. Has nothing, it's not based on communications per se, it's a business case. And that's when you start seeing those changes in industries, you're going to see major changes. AI, by the way, AI again is an interesting, there is no artificial intelligence whatsoever. All there is machine learning and predictability. Machine learning predicts outcomes based on a set of data points that it describes in the information. That's all this is. The problem is to do AI or machine learning right, you have to have clean data and understand what you're looking for. There's some pretty amazing stuff there. By the way, if you haven't seen, go look at VoiceSense. They actually claim they can predict with 60 to 90 seconds of speech the probability that you will default on a loan based on how you talk. That's a pretty scary concept. So there's some pretty amazing stuff happening.
Oh, John or Blair, anything?
Okay. Well, your comment about where you see, I guess, leaders coming or things changing. Earlier slide had that kind of wall of logos of all the familiar faces we know. The thing I want to say is it's not going to come from the usual suspects, the disruption, okay? The AI stuff is really coming from, I hate to say it, but the Googles and the Amazons of the world, because they have the cloud infrastructure that you need to economically build up the data sets that you need to have AI applications that work. When we talk about messaging, it's guys like Twilio. When we talk about workstream collaboration, it's guys like Slack. Companies that we weren't talking about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, but now they are leading the way and really presenting big threats to the Ciscos, Avayas, Microsofts. Everyone is chasing what these guys are doing. So if your comfort level is the Mitels and Avayas of the world, etc., they will do a good job for you, but you're looking at a very small subset of where the really cool innovation is. And this is my first time here, and yours too, and I guess yours too, Phil?
I was here before.
Okay. A lot of developers here, right? You guys live and breathe this stuff. So you know what these companies are doing. So you understand the kind of technologies that they're bringing to the table. And it's very different stuff from just creating dial tone cheaper. It's a very different environment today. So you guys are in a really great spot because you natively understand a lot of this stuff. And the sky's the limit. That's the cool thing about the APIs. And that's where I think the value is going to be, is like Phil says, the more you can customize applications, it's just simple stuff, notifications, reminders. Boy, that makes a world of difference to your customers.
And a lot of it really is about communication enabling the applications. And this is something we've been talking about for a really long time. And that's something that CPaaS can do and what CPaaS is really, really strong at. So I think we all vehemently agree that it's not going to be about selling dial tone, selling phones. It really is about those applications and what you can do to tie communications into those applications. But I think the issue is, we in this room understand that, but your customers don't, and they don't understand what's the value and how they can use it. So Phil talked about the dentist office, and I actually did a panel at Enterprise Connect about 2 years ago. I was so tired of every time I would talk to a CPaaS vendor, and I would say, tell me about use cases, and they would always say, well, when you go to the dentist office, it's like, okay, give me something else. So we actually had a session on applications other than dentist office. So of course it was all the Uber types of applications, but the idea is that your customers don't really understand the value of CPaaS and how to use it. So it's up to all of us to really come up with those use cases to help them understand. So if you can come up with a couple in their vertical industry, so they're like, oh, okay, so this is how I can use it to help my customers' to improve productivity, whatever it is. That's what's really important, and that's what's really missing in the industry right now. So I really encourage you to, when you're up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep, try to think of what are some good use cases that will help your customers understand how they can use CPaaS.
Just one final comment. I'm going to say what I'd like to see in UCaaS.
Okay.
The two things that I think we're going to see in the next year and a half that I've been waiting a number of years to see. The first is management tools using machine learning for availability. I don't want people to know my presence. I don't want people to know what device I'm on. I don't want to know where I am. What I want is them to understand my availability to them at that point in time. And availability requires presence, context, it requires your preferences, and it requires other information about you at that point in time. I think machine learning to solve that. So, and when you come to me and make a phone call with me, the phone doesn't ring. You actually get a response that says, hey, I know you're a salesman. I'm in a meeting with a customer. I don't want to talk to a salesman right now, so I'm unavailable to you, or I am available. So it becomes customized to the contextual individual who's trying to interact with you. I think we're going to see that in the next year to year and a half from someone. I think it will cause major changes in the industry. I think the second thing we're going to see with machine learning, and this is in the pure UC context, is using machine learning to provide information during a communications flow. I think you're going to see that come also in the next year. Cisco's announced some things in that space. So the idea of, we're in a conversation, we're working on a document, I've got a window that pops up interesting information or names of other people I might want to include in the communication. So it's actually providing me information to help me in the thought process. I think we'll see both of those over the next year to year and a half become things that are in the industry and available. So I suggest that those might be interesting areas to think about how machine learning can be applied, because it actually turns out what's interesting is you control the data set, right? So you actually have the data set on me and who calls me and what they are. You can actually structure that in terms of how you manage my preferences and my contextual availability, things like that. So I think that's an interesting area.
Absolutely. Very cool. Let's take a little step back. So we talked about the present, we talked about the future. Let's talk about the past. There's still, I read some crazy stat on the internet, so who knows if it's true, that there's about 23% of people are in the cloud now on their, their phone systems. They say, the internet says 23%. They said it's heading towards there.
The internet says lots of things.
Yeah, it says a lot of things. And so I'd love to get your opinions on, where do you see for an on-prem versus cloud solutions? Do you feel like they're, where is the market right now? And why have the traditional bigger players who have all the on-prem, why have they not been able to get people into the cloud? And what are they trying to do that? And where can all the people here where's the opportunity for all the attendees here?
So very, very simply, numbers are somewhere around 45 million seats are cloud seats today. 450 to 550 million global seats, so it seems to be about 10%. If you look at the synergy data, look at all the data, that's why I said 20% I think is very high.
Okay.
The reality is, I think there are two factors, maybe three, that really drive people to not consider the cloud. The first is price. I mean, John, I think, can talk to this. He's done a number of analysis. If you do a straightforward analysis and you add up the TCO for a premise system, including the support costs and the maintenance costs, and you contrast that with an MRR offer at $25 to $30 a month, premise is always going to win on cost on TCO on a 5-year TCO. Always. And the reason is very simple. You're ignoring a critical factor of the cloud. What factor are you ignoring in that TCO analysis? No, total cost. You buy it. You buy a system, put it on the prem, pay maintenance and support. You buy a cloud offer at a month, and you compare those, and the cloud is going to be 20 or 30% higher. It's been pretty much true for the last 5 years, and the reason is nobody considers administrative costs, internal staff, employee costs. So if I've got a 1,000-person organization and I've got 3 people running it, and I can have 2 of them go do other things if I go to the cloud, and they're making $70,000 base salary, 45% burden, they're at $120,000 a year, times 2 is $240,000. $240,000 divided by 1,000 users is $240 a year. That's $20 a month to pay for those 2 administrative heads. If you don't take into account how administration changes, you can't change the underlying economics. Right now, most large organizations don't go to cloud because it's not cost effective for them in their analysis, because they don't take that into account. I think the other side is there's a whole bunch of things that keep people on the premise, whether it's security, reliability, et cetera, and there's just a lot of I'll call it inertia there. So I think you have to change both of those.
So Phil is totally right. It's a big thing is the cost. The other thing is just status quo. If it works, don't change it. So it's not that the cloud is competing with premise. It's that the cloud is competing with not doing anything. So it's just, I've got something, it works. Even if it's an old Nortel system, whatever, it works. So customers don't want to make the move. I think if we look at small business versus large business, it's a lot easier for an SMB to move to the cloud. They don't have to deal with all the migration of the prem. So we can't just look at it with a big swath. We really do have to look at it individually. I think the security issue has gone away. Like 5 years ago, the big thing was, oh, the cloud isn't as secure. I met with some banks last week at a conference, and they're all in on the cloud. And I asked, what about security? And they said, it's not a problem anymore. So yes, Google had an outage just 2 days ago. But I think for the most part, a lot of companies realize that the cloud is going to provide a high level of security. It provides the redundancy that's harder to get on-prem. So there are a lot of compelling reasons for companies to move to the cloud, and they're starting to really get it. But it's taking time. But a lot of the vendors feel, so a lot of vendors are no longer really pushing their prem-based solution. They're pushing hybrid maybe, so that you can keep what you currently have, but when you get new things, it's going to be hybrid, and a lot of the applications are all going to be in the cloud. So like team collaboration, things like Slack, Microsoft Teams, all of those are in the cloud. You can't get an on-prem team collaboration type of solution. So what a lot of the vendors are doing is, keep your core, on-prem if you don't want to move, but the new stuff, AI, all these new things that are coming out, that's all going to be in the cloud layered on.
Just a few things on that. So first is, as we've heard, if you're out there selling customers or prospects on cloud, and if they start talking about, oh, how much am I going to save, that's when you have to change the conversation, because if they're buying it on price, that's the wrong reason. Yes, the OpEx is more attractive than CapEx, and that makes it a go in a lot of cases. But you got to set realistic expectations about as Phil says, the long-term cost. But with that comes long-term benefits that you just don't get with staying on-prem. So related to that, there's probably an issue you're seeing out there, and that's kind of the generational thing, where a lot of IT folks, big or small organizations, if they've been in this role for 20, 30 years, and they're really tied to legacy technologies, it's going to be a little harder for them to embrace the cloud. And that's another point to address from the sales side, to say you need to show them how and why cloud, even if it's a hybrid approach where they go a little at a time, is actually a safer and smarter way, not just to make the business more effective, but also to, in a sense, to kind of preserve their role. Because if they hang on to legacy stuff for too long, their role is going to go away sooner or later. And there is definitely inertia from within IT circles. They don't want to take on new stuff that could be risky, that if they're getting close to their retirement window, they don't want to risk their legacy taking on technology they don't understand. So there's a role here to kind of simplify it and make it manageable for them, okay? The other thing with the cloud, too, is this idea that you get, we've heard this already, one of the things I think is really a strong point for your company is your data center infrastructure. Equinix, really top-tier data center relationships that you have, and all the right certifications up and down the line. That is the kind of confidence you can take to sell them, to say, hey, business continuity, disaster recovery, these things really matter for keeping businesses going and engaged with the right technologies. And you tell them you're not going to get this if you stick with prem, and things are changing too quickly, and the marketplace is becoming obviously more globalized, not just for your customers, but also the way the business has to operate. So we already heard it today about moving to decentralized models. Cloud is by far the best way to manage that kind of seamlessly as you keep growing. You don't have to duplicate infrastructures. The redundancies are there. So there's a lot of good reasons to use a cloud-based model when it comes to growing a business and scaling it for today's marketplace.
Yeah, to follow up on that, it's all about flexibility. As John said, don't get into the cost discussion, because that's not where you want to be. The cloud offers so much flexibility. We've got all these new things coming all the time, and who knows what it's going to be next year. So with a cloud infrastructure, you can adapt to that. With a prem solution, it's just too hard, too costly. So for your customers to really be able to be forward-thinking, they can't think prem anymore. It's just, that ship has sailed.
All right. Kind of going along with this, we've noticed that CPaaS has been kind of dramatically evolving in the last couple of years. Twilio, Nexmo, they've really been educating the market on what CPaaS is. What's your viewpoint from an international standpoint? We noticed that in the U.S., great adoption, but sometimes when I talk to international companies, like very large carriers, they've never even heard of Twilio. So where do you guys see kind of the trends going and why?
So I actually did talk to Twilio the other day in anticipation of this question. So looking at their numbers, it looks like international is about 2 years behind domestically where we are. So the market numbers that they've got this year internationally are where we were 2 years ago domestically. So there is about a 2-year gap there. Some of the areas where there's more interest internationally is the UK, Germany, France, and Italy. So there's going to be a lot of activity there. Phil, you're...
Yeah, so all technologies have adoption curves, right? It starts in the US, it goes to English-speaking Europe and Australia next, UK, Germany, Norway, Scandinavia, because they all speak English. That's when we haven't written the manuals in other languages. Then it start written, and typically that happens 12 months after things, the curves, if you watch the adoption curves, there's a 12-month lag there. Then there's another 12-month lag to kind of the rest of the industrial world, and then another lag to the rest of the world. So it's like almost a 3 to 4 year kind of propagation. I think CPaaS is in that. I don't think there's any cultural reasons why CPaaS doesn't work. I think, though, there's the other thing with CPaaS that you guys need to really think about is there really are two very different kinds of CPaaS, and there are two very different implementations. So if you put CPaaS, you say, think about CPaaS as PSTN and as IP, and they're very different, right? PSTN CPaaS is mainly what Twilio has been selling to date. That's going to transition to more and more IP-based CPaaS when your phone is capable of doing things like VoLTE or doing it over IP. So I can actually just use IP services. The second big differentiation is whether or not an employee is involved. If you look at the majority of the Twilio deployments, they don't involve an employee. It's like an SMS message, that kind of thing. The problem is when that SMS message now has a phone number to call to reschedule your appointment, now I'm involving an employee, and the employee system that gets involved in needs to integrate. And that's where you actually begin to see a lot more integration. So as you look at CPaaS, those things that are totally independent of employees, like if you think about the Uber CPaaS, it never touches an Uber employee. Who cares what system it's done on? It can be done on anything. On the other hand, if you need to integrate with employees, you need to do things that integrate with what they have. So that really, I think, kind of drives a CPaaS thought process of the kind of CPaaS application you want to focus on.
Absolutely. John?
Good.
All right, cool. So we're going to open up to the audience. Is there any questions? We have some of the brightest minds in the entire industry on the stage, excluding myself. So any questions for these wonderful people? Raise your hands. Anyone? Ask away. Cool, we have a question over there.
So for a smaller client, 5 to 10 users, is the price structure of administration something to bring up, actually? Because the amount of time for an on-prem solution that it takes, they may have 5 changes a year.
I think absolutely. I mean, in terms of, somebody who goes out and look at a 10-seat, whatever small premise system you want.
Phil, could you repeat
Absolutely.
the question? For
So the question
audience?
was, is administration important to a 5 or 10 person organization? And I actually think in some ways it's maybe even more important because, if you look at any activity, there's kind of what I'll call fixed per activity effort you have to do, and then there's per user effort. And the fixed effort's the same whether you're deploying, if you're putting in a key system in your business, there's a set of effort that's the same regardless of whether you have 5 employees or 100 employees. Getting the system in place, connecting up the trunking, doing that, et cetera, that's going to be there regardless. And so I think you can make that argument. I would definitely make the argument and say, typically an organization spends this much time getting that system installed and you can eliminate that. Absolutely. And I think it's got to become an important part of when you talk about total cost, including those total costs in. On the other hand, I think Patrick made a very good point, which is if you think about cloud, the way I like to think about it, has anybody ever read Timothy Chow? If you ever read Timothy Chow, go look up Timothy Chow, C-H-O-U. He wrote a book called The 7 Clear Models of Cloud Computing. It's kind of the Bible of how cloud business models work. If you read his books, what you'll realize is he argues that there's a fundamental change between the Model 3, which is open source, and Model 6, which is SaaS. And it's around basically repetition, standardization, and specialization. And his argument is that that's what creates cloud. It's actually the same exact thing that happened in the Industrial Revolution. If you think about it, 300 years ago, everything got manufactured locally. Your local blacksmith made everything. Then all of a sudden, things were built in factories. That's the cloud. The problem is, in a lot of cases, we're selling to the blacksmith and telling him we're going to take his job away. So one of the things to consider in all of these is, are you talking to the right person? Because if I come in and say the great benefit of my system is it eliminates a job and saves money, if the guy I'm selling to is the guy who's going to lose his job, he's not really going to be excited. So I think one of the keys is understand who you're selling to. In a small organization, you got to sell to the owner, the guy who understands the profit value.
But I think it's also, you want to talk to them about the value that it provides. So the TCO is one thing, but it's also, by not having someone focused on monitoring a prem system, you can focus on what your company actually does and improving productivity and doing what you do best.
For a small outfit, I mean, they don't have anybody. They always call a vendor to come make a change on a North Star or something. So it's one way to bring up a conversation with the owner, like you said.
Right.
Cool. Any other questions? All right, it looks like people are getting excited for lunch. You guys, big round of applause. Thank you very much. And I believe Blair, Phil, and John will be here today, so if you want to ask them some side questions, they're very, very nice people, so just come on up to them. One last announcement, I believe lunch is down at the beach. Is that right, Jay? So if it's not at the beach, blame Jay. Otherwise, feel free to get up. And we are starting back up at 1:30. I saw a thumbs up back there from Darren. So 1:30. We'll see you all back here. Also, it's not.
So we're meeting now. Yes. Are we still going to see a beach? Yeah.
He wasn't showing the slides at all on the slide, so.
I know, I saw that and I was like, hey, can you show them? And because how this was set up,
Yeah.
like, they can't see it.
Got it. What's up, Louis? You need this? All right, let me take it off. Good. How's it going?
Good.
How's your conference so far?
Good. Yeah. Except that it's freezing a little.
It's funny. You should come to San Francisco more often. I guess we're always cold in San Francisco, but now our body temperature is used to it. So that.
Well, listen, in Miami,
I mean, there's a reason you live in Miami. Yeah.
well,
It's just so warm up there and it's so great. Yeah.
the humidity is, you can't hear it.
Oh yeah. How was the trip out?
Good.
Nice. No crazy storms going through.
Actually, we were delayed because of some bad weather, but
Yeah.
made it on time.
Okay.
I got the tail end of the reception yesterday.
Yeah, we had an engineer flying from like just the Midwest.
Yeah.
First the storm was going through Houston, so his flight had to be T-shirt. And then they're like, we're gonna go to Denver for the mid-stop, and then the storm just showed up in Denver. He got stuck in Denver for an extra like 8 hours.
Oh shit.
And so just coming from Arkansas, it took him 20 hours to get here.
Oh my god. It's terrible.
Yeah. Thank you, Blair. That was wonderful. Thank you. That was great. John, thank you so much. That was great.
Appreciate it.
And I told you when she started numbers with Bill,
Uh,
he gets into those numbers.
This is why I just grab stuff off the internet, and then I'm like, all right, okay, throw some stuff out there. This is great. Thank you.
It could have gone a lot longer.
Oh, yeah.
creates a database table or a new database that returns a 201.
Oh, yes, I know.
But on the Docker container, it returns 202. Like
Great, yes. Docker, actually, it's telling him something that he doesn't understand. 201 means I can't come to quorum, but I made it locally. It's just not distributed. 202 means all my nodes are independent. So he probably only has a single server that thinks it has more nodes.
Well, but on with Docker, we actually have a critter on Docker container for Couch because we can't connect to Docker firewall to the sandbox.
We could open that up but anyway,
So,
if you guys got it already. But yeah, that's what it is.
So what he has to have, because he is using Docker to connect to it, Docker thinks the 202 is wrong. Yeah. No,
I just didn't expect that.
I thought it was like, look, have Doctrine fail, check to make sure that the database exists manually, and have that do the check of success or failure doing the database. Just to work around it for now. We'll code it better later. Like just get it working.
Yeah, right.
Well, that or just ignore it for now. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah, worst case scenario.
Just get it working.
Just get it working.
It's going to crash later in a minute.
Yeah.
True enough. Cool. Yeah, no worries. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Yo.
So, are you recording the podium stream too?
No, I'm not multi-coding.
Okay.
Just because I was worried about.
So should I go really wide on the camera in the other room to get the screen for the slides?
Oh, no, I'm recording the mix.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, no, we have. I'm recording the live mix. I'm just not recording each one individually.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the slide deck is, if it's not on camera, it's being.
It is being recorded.
Okay, that's all I wanted. So you could overlay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Basically, what
I just realized that it was like we have it so tight in there. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't a.
Yeah, no, it's, and I think I'll actually put it back to being super tight again. But,
Oh, do you want me to change this one back?
Yeah, sure. We need to pull the chairs off too.
Claude, do you want to bring your food? What?
Sure.
What do you want?
Whatever's on offer.
Okay, cool.
Learning a lot?
I was just telling Isaacs, first 10 minutes, I was like, I got this. And then about halfway through your speech, I was like, holy cow. But it's amazing. I'm really glad I came out and listening. And all the presenters have been really, like, it was cool, like even just.
Far left. Really like the release of that. It was fun too. It's and from the Uma talk as well. It clicked in my head. We keep talking about turnkey telco and building the tools for a telco business.
Yeah.
And he's up there talking about go a step further, not just for turnkey business.
Yeah.
That's good.
I had a quick question for you. I managed to convince Faraz from the NetOps team to come out. He's here today.
Oh, shit.
But he has to leave tonight.
Okay.
He was like, hey, I think he missed the first bit you did on the 5.0 stuff. Then I was having a chat last night with Luis about some of the CouchDB layering shit that we've been battling around. And I tossed the idea out to Luis to be like, can we get like a 20, 30 minute like more technical powwow?
Yeah, totally.
If we can do that and you can join us, that would be rad.
Yeah, when's he leaving?
I'll find out. I think probably I'm gonna wager sometime around 6.
Yeah, okay.
But I'll find out. He's just down having lunch right now.
Yeah.
And so I'll find out.
Well, and after these main talks and everything else like that, I'm going to relieve myself from the AV stuff, so then I'll be free.
Right on.
So, yeah, maybe during one of the talks, but if he's also around after, we could do it immediately following the talks too.
Sounds good. All right, I'll come find you after.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Lunch.
Yes, well, bathroom, cigarette.
So you'll be back here is what
Yeah.
you're saying? Okay.
Taylor, how's your KAZOOcon experience?
Carl just offered you the position coding because
I have no idea, to be honest. It's probably a negative.
It's good, man. It's like it's
Yeah, right. You can. We should.
Or do we have lunch up here separate?
Can you? No, probably not. But are we continuing the live stream on this track?
We didn't do that last year.
I'm doing what we did last year.
I mean, do you want me to see if I can find Jay?
We can always start it again if we want to. Stop streaming the live